Maple Creek was the kind of town where everyone knew your name, and the annual apple pie contest was bigger news than anything happening in the state capital. It was a place where kids still rode bikes to the swimming hole, and the ice cream shop closed promptly at 8. No exception. And right at the heart of it, nestled between the old general store and Mr. Henderson's perpetually blooming rose garden, stood the Maple Creek Library. It wasn't a grand building, not like the towering university libraries you saw in movies. It was sturdy brick, built sometime in the 1930s, with wide, inviting steps, and a big oak door that always seemed to creak a friendly welcome. Inside, the air hummed with the quiet rustle of turning pages and the faint, comforting scent of old paper and wood polish. Shelves stretched to the high ceilings packed with stories from every corner of the world. It was a haven, a quiet escape, a place where dusty history books rubbed shoulders with vibrant graphic novels. Eleanor Vance, the librarian, had been the heart of that haven for 25 years. Her silver-streaked hair was usually tied back in a practical bun, and her sensible glasses often sat perched on the end of her nose as she helped a bewildered third grader find a book on dinosaurs or guided a seasoned reader. She knew the library like the back of her hand. Every creaky floorboard, every hidden gem on the top shelf. More importantly, she knew the people of Maple Creek. She knew that young Leo Martinez, who was usually glued to his phone, transformed into an eager explorer when faced with a new science fiction series. She knew that Mrs. Gable, despite her gruff exterior, secretly devoured romance novels. The library wasn't just her job. It was her life. One Tuesday in late autumn, a chill wind seemed to blow through Maple Creek, and it had nothing to do with the weather. Rumors, thin and sharp as ice shards, began to circulate. Whispers about budget cuts, economic downturns, and hard choices. Eleanor tried to ignore them, focusing instead on sorting a new batch of donated books. But a knot of dread tightened in her stomach. The official announcement came a week later. Mayor Thompson, usually a man of booming laughter and easy smiles, stood before the town council with a somber face. Community Hall was packed, the air thick with anticipation and a growing sense of unease. Eleanor sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Leo was a few rows behind her, looking nervous, his usual confident swagger replaced by a worried slouch. "Friends, neighbors," Mayor Thompson began, his voice unusually strained, "I'm not going to sugarcoat. This Maple Creek is facing some tough times. The county budget has been slashed, and we've had to make some incredibly difficult decisions." He paused, glancing around the room. Eleanor held her breath. She'd seen the signs, the reduced hours, the delayed repairs. After extensive deliberation, the mayor continued, his gaze falling, and, with the heaviest of hearts, the town council has voted to close the Maple Creek Library indefinitely. Effective gasp ripped through the room. It was followed by stunned silence. Then a rising tide of murmurs, whispers, and outright cries of protest. "No!" someone shouted from the back. "You can't!" Eleanor felt as if the air had been knocked from her lungs. Her carefully constructed world, built on stories and quiet wisdom, was crumbling. She looked at Leo, whose face had gone pale, his eyes wide with shock. He wasn't just a reader, he was part of the library's teen advisory board, full of ideas for new programs and events. For him, the library was a springboard into the future. Mayor Thompson raised his hands, trying to quell the uproar. "Please, please. I understand your feelings. Believe me, this was not an easy decision. The library's operating costs, the aging infrastructure, we simply don't have the funds to keep it open. We've explored every option, every possible avenue." Eleanor wanted to stand up, to yell, to tell them they were wrong. How could they put a price on knowledge, on community, on a place where imaginations could soar? But her voice caught in her throat. She felt paralyzed. A silent scream building inside her. What about a fundraiser? A woman called out, "We could raise the money." The amount needed to not only cover current costs, but also necessary renovations. far more than a small town like ours could realistically raise. In such a short time, people began to talk amongst themselves, their voices low and grim. As the meeting dispersed, a sense of profound loss hung in the air. Eleanor watched as people drifted out, their faces etched with sadness. Leo approached her, his shoulders slumped. "Ms. Vance," he began, his voice small. "Is it really true? They're really going to close it?" And Eleanor managed a weak nod. He tried to sound strong, but her voice wavered. Unless a miracle happens." But even as she spoke the words, they felt hollow. Miracles didn't happen in Maple Creek. Not usually. Later that evening, long after the last townsfolk had left the community hall, Eleanor found herself back at the library. The lights were off, save for a single lamp illuminating the front desk. She walked slowly through the silent aisles, her fingers trailing over the spines of books, each one a familiar friend. The quiet hum of the building seemed to carry a mournful note now. The scent of old paper, once comforting, now felt like the bittersweet perfume of farewell. She stopped at the children's section where colorful picture books sat neatly on low shelves. She imagined the tiny hands that would no longer reach for them, the wide eyes that would no longer light up at a new story. She imagined the silence that would fall over this vibrant space. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the titles on the shelves. How could they just let it die? How could a town survive without its heart? The thought was unbearable. She sank into a worn armchair in the reading nook, surrounded by the silent witnesses of countless stories. The future felt bleak, painted in shades of gray. The Maple Creek Library, her home, their home, was facing its last chapter, and Eleanor, for the first time in a very long time, felt utterly, hopelessly lost. The idea of a miracle seemed more distant than the stars outside. The news of the library's impending closure spread through Maple Creek like a cold front, chilling every smile. The initial shock gave way to a quiet sadness, a sense of resignation that settled deep in the town's bones. People still came to the library, but the atmosphere had changed. The usual cheerful chatter was replaced by hushed tones. The browsing felt more like a farewell tour. Eleanor, despite her own heavy heart, tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. She helped patrons find books, organized the shelves, and even managed a few strayed. She couldn't just let it happen. The library was too important. "We have to do something, Ms. Vance," Leo declared one afternoon, bursting into her office. He was usually a whirlwind of restless energy, but now his eyes burned with a determined spark. "My mom says we can't just give up. She says maybe we can start a petition, get people to write letters to the council." Eleanor appreciated his youthful optimism. "We can try, Leo. We will try." But she knew, deep down, that petitions and letters might not be enough. The mayor had made it clear. The problem was money, not a lack of appreciation. Still, the town rallied. A Save Our Library committee was formed, spearheaded by a tenacious group of senior citizens who had been regular patrons for decades. They organized bake sales, car washes, and even a small charity concert featuring the high school band. The response from the community was heartwarming. People dug into their pockets, even those who didn't frequent the library often, because they understood its value as a symbol of Maple Creek. Leo, along with his friends, designed posters and handed out flyers. They even set up a table outside the grocery store, collecting signatures and donations in a glass jar. "Every dollar counts," he'd tell passersby, his voice passionate. But as Mayor Thompson had warned, the needed amount was substantial. After 3 weeks of tireless effort, the fundraising thermometer outside the library barely nudged past a tenth of the goal. The bake sales brought in a few $100s, the car wash, another $100, the concert, perhaps $1,000. It was admirable, certainly, a testament to the town's spirit, but it was nowhere near the six-figure sum required to keep the library afloat and fund essential repairs. The boiler was ancient, the roof needed patching, and the old wiring was a fire hazard. Eleanor attended every committee meeting, her heart sinking a little further with each update. "We're just not making enough progress, Mrs. Gable," the romance novel enthusiast lamented one evening, her voice tinged with defeat. "It's not for lack of trying, bless everyone's hearts, but it's just too big a mountain to climb." The official deadline loomed closer, December 31st. With each passing day, the light in the library seemed to dim a little more. Boxes started appearing in the back room, ready for packing. Eleanor found herself looking at the shelves, wondering which books would go to other libraries, which would be sold off, and which would simply be discarded. The thought was unbearable. One particularly gray afternoon, Eleanor sat at her desk staring at a pea-gold she'd put together, detailing the library's dwindling funds. It was futile. Her phone rang, and it was Mayor Thompson. "Eleanor," he said, his voice heavy. "I just wanted to let you know the council is meeting next week to file the budget for the new year. Unless there's a significant, unexpected influx of funds, before then the decision will be irreversible." "I understand, Mayor," Eleanor replied, her voice flat. She couldn't conjure money out of thin air. After she hung up, Eleanor walked through the library, feeling the weight of its impending silence. She ran her hand along the spines of her favorite books. A silent farewell. This wasn't just about losing a building, it was about losing a piece of Maple Creek's soul. Where would the children go for story time? Where would the seniors gather for their book club? Where would Leo go to dream of other worlds? She found Leo in the young adult section, hunched over a large atlas tracing routes with his finger. He looked up as she approached, his face etched with worry. "It's not looking good, is it, Ms. Vance?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Eleanor shook her head slowly. "I'm afraid not, Leo. We've done everything we can." He closed the atlas with a sigh, the sound echoing a bit too loudly in the quiet space. "It's just, I don't get it. How can they just let it go? It's so important." "It is," Eleanor agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "It truly is." She thought about all the lives touched by the library, the countless children who learned to read within its walls, the lonely souls who found companionship in its quiet corners, the students who found answers to their questions. All of that, gone. A deep weariness settled over Eleanor's. She had fought hard, as had the rest of Maple Creek, but it seemed the odds were simply too great. The hope that had flickered for a brief time was now almost entirely extinguished. The library, once a beacon of knowledge and community, seemed to be fading into an inevitable darkness. As she locked up that night, the heavy oak door felt colder than usual under her hand. The lights inside were off, plunging the interior into a deep gloom. Eleanor imagined the shelves standing empty, the rooms silent. Gathering dust, the thought sent a fresh wave of despair washing over her. Maple Creek, without its library, would feel like a book with its final, most important chapter ripped out. She walked home, under a sky full of indifferent stars, the bitter taste of defeat heavy on her tongue. The miracle she'd half-jokingly wished for seemed an impossible dream, lost somewhere in the vast, uncaring universe. The days that followed the mayor's call were bleak. The fundraising efforts dwindled to a halt. The Save Our Library Committee met less frequently, their discussions turning from strategy to a mournful sharing of memories. Eleanor continued her duties with a heavy heart, her movements slower, her usual bright spark dimmed. She began the painful process of inventorying the collection, preparing for the eventual dispersal. Each book she touched felt like a goodbye. Leo, usually full of schemes and energy, was noticeably quieter. He still came to the library every day after school, not to research or read new books, but simply to sit. Sometimes he'd help Eleanor with a small task, but mostly he just sat in the quiet reading nook, surrounded by the silence that was soon to be permanent. He was like a young mourner, grieving a loss that hadn't quite happened yet, but was certain to come. One chilly Tuesday morning, a week before the final town council meeting, Eleanor arrived at the library earlier than usual. The air was crisp, and a thin layer of frost sparkled on the grass outside. She unlocked the heavy oak door, the familiar creak echoing a little louder in the still morning. The library was always calmest before it opened, a peaceful hush before the day's gentle bustle. She walked to the front desk, ready to start her usual routine. Turn on the computers, check the overnight returns, and sort the mail. The mail pile was small, mostly utility bills and a few advertising flyers, but one item stood out. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope, heavier than the others, with an expensive feel to the paper. It wasn't addressed to the Maple Creek Library itself, nor to Eleanor Vance. Instead, it bore a strange inscription written in elegant looping. To the spirit of Maple Creek, care of the Maple Creek. What on earth frowned? The spirit of Maple Creek. What on earth did that mean? And the postmark wasn't local. It was from Memphis, Tennessee. Her heart gave a small, curious flutter. Memphis. That was unusual. She turned the envelope over in ears. There was no return address, just a small embossed crest that looked like a stylized crown. She picked up her letter opener, a silver antique, shaped like a quill, and carefully slid open the seal. Inside there was a single sheet of heavy parchment, folded neatly, and a smaller sealed envelope tucked beneath it. Eleanor unfolded the parchment first. It was a letter again in elegant calligraphy, with a formal, legalistic tone. Dear custodian of Maple Creek's enduring spirit, this letter serves as formal notification from the estate of the late Mr. A.E. Presley regarding a specific directive within his last will and testament. It has recently come to our attention that the Maple Creek Library faces potential closure due to financial constraints. Eleanor's breath hitched. Mr. A.E. Presley, and they knew about the library's financial troubles. Her mind raced. Who was A.E. Presley? And how did they know about Maple Creek? She continued reading, her eyes scanning the formal language. It was Mr. Presley's profound wish, as articulated in a previously unexecuted codicil to his will, that a significant portion of his residual estate be allocated to support enduring power of knowledge, particularly in places where such institutions are most vulnerable. The Maple Creek Library has been identified as such an institution, meeting the unique criteria outlined by Mr. Presley. Therefore, we are pleased to inform you that a substantial donation has been authorized and is now being processed for transfer to the Maple Creek Library. The details regarding the amount and conditions of this gift. Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she finished reading. A significant portion of an estate. A substantial donation. It sounded too good to be true. It sounded like a miracle, but A.E. Presley, who was this person? And how had they identified Maple Creek? It felt like something out of a dream or a very elaborate hoax. She carefully put down the first letter and picked up the smaller sealed envelope. This one simply had confidential written on it. Her fingers fumbled a bit as she opened it. Inside was a single bank statement, or rather a formal document. Her eyes immediately darted to the number at the bottom. It was a staggering figure, 7 digits followed by a decimal point, and 2 zeros. Eleanor gasped, a small, choked sound. She had to read it. Substantial. It was life-changing. It was enough to save the library, repair the boiler, fix the roof, upgrade the technology, and even establish an endowment for future operations. More than enough. Her mind reeled. This couldn't be real. She tried to think of anyone she knew, any wealthy patron, but no one came to mind. And the Memphis postmark, it was all so utterly bizarre. Just then the front door creaked open, and Leo walked in, a thermos of hot cocoa in his hand. He usually arrived early on Tuesdays to help her set up. "Morning, Ms. Vance," he said, his voice quiet, still tinged with the sadness of the past weeks. "Thought you might need some warmth." Eleanor looked up, her face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. She held out the formal bank document, her hand shaking. "Leo," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "look at this." Just look at this." Leo put down his thermos and took the paper from her. His brow furrowed as he read the numbers, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, then to a dawning, incredulous wonder. His jaw dropped. "Meds, Vance," he breathed, his voice an awestruck whisper. Is this real? Where did this come from? A. Presley? Who is that?" Eleanor could only shake her head, still trying to process the enormity of the discovery. "I don't know, Leo, I honestly don't know. But it says it's from Memphis, and it mentions a will." She picked up the first letter again, her gaze falling on the sender's name. Mr. A. E. Presley, a name that seemed to echo with a strange, impossible familiarity, yet made no sense in the context of Maple Creek. The crown on the embossed crest seemed to wink at her. Profound mystery had just landed on her desk, bringing with it a dizzying, unbelievable glimmer of hope. The library wasn't saved yet, not truly. But for the first time in weeks, Eleanor felt a spark ignite within her, chasing away the pervasive gloom, a miracle. It seemed might actually be possible. The small formal letter and the astounding bank document lay on Eleanor's desk like artifacts from another dimension. Leo kept rereading the numbers as if willing them to change or disappear, but they remained stubbornly, miraculously, the same 7 digits. A number that could not only save the Maple Creek Library, but transform it. "We have to call Mayor Thompson," Leo finally managed to say, his voice still a little hoarse with disbelief. "Right now," Eleanor nodded, her mind still reeling. She dialed the mayor's office, her fingers surprisingly steady. When Mayor Thompson answered, his voice was tired, expecting bad news. "Mayor," Eleanor began. "This is Eleanor Vance. Something extraordinary has arrived at the library." She explained carefully about the mysterious envelope, the formal letter, and the incredible amount of money promised. She mentioned Mr. A. E. Presley and the Memphis connection. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Mayor Thompson's voice, sharper now, laced with suspicion. "Eleanor, are you sure this isn't some kind of elaborate prank or a scam? Mr. A. E. Presley from Memphis. That sounds highly suspicious." "I thought that too, Mayor," Eleanor admitted. "But the documentation looks incredibly legitimate. And the amount? It's too specific, too large for a simple prank. It mentions a codicil. Send me copies of everything," Mayor Thompson instructed, his voice now serious. "Immediately. And don't touch anything else until I've had my lawyers look at it. This could be big, or it could be a very cruel trick." Eleanor assured him she would. Within an hour, Mayor Thompson himself arrived at the library along with the town's legal counsel, M.S. Davies. They examined the documents with forensic intensity, scrutinizing every detail, every signature. Eleanor and Leo watched, holding their breath, a fragile hope flickering within them. M.S. Davies, a sharp woman with an even sharper mind, spent over an hour on the phone tracing the law firm mentioned in the letter. She looked up the estate details, cross-referenced names, and verified addresses. The tension in the library was palpable. Leo sat quietly in the corner, trying to read but utterly unable to focus. Eleanor just paced, clutching her hands. Finally, M.S. Davies hung up the phone. She took off her glasses, pinched the bridge of her nose, and then looked directly at Eleanor and Mayor Thompson. Her expression was one of profound bewilderment, mixed with a hint of awe. "Mayor Eleanor," she began, her voice steady but a touch incredulous. "This is unbelievable, but it's real." Eleanor gasped. Leo bolted upright from his chair. "The law firm is legitimate, M.S." Davies continued. "They represent the estate of war." A stunned silence fell over the library. Eleanor's mind struggled to catch up. Elvis, the Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. It was impossible. He'd been dead for decades. Elvis Presley. Mayor Thompson sputtered, his jaw hanging open. "You mean that Elvis Presley, the singer?" The very same, M.S. Davies confirmed, a small, disbelieving smile playing on her lips. Eleanor felt a wave of dizziness. Elvis Presley. It made no sense. He was a global superstar. Why Maple Creek? Had he ever even been here? The town wasn't exactly known for its rock and roll history. They confirmed the amount too, M.S. Davies added, holding up the bank statement. It's exactly as stated, a direct, no-strings-attached donation to the Maple Creek Library. The only condition is that the funds must be used for the library's direct benefit and continued operation, ensuring its future for generations. No strings attached. Mayor Thompson repeated, still reeling. No requirement for a statue of him? No Elvis-themed reading room? M.S. Davies chuckled softly. None that were, stated Mayor. Just a genuine desire to help, they said. Mr. Presley had a quiet fondness for libraries, a place where he could sometimes find peace and escape the constant demands of his fame in small communities. Eleanor sat down heavily in her chair, the full weight of the news settling on her. The library was saved. Not just saved, but given an incredible new lease on life. And it was all thanks to Elvis Presley. The sheer absurdity of it would have been funny if it weren't so profoundly moving. Leo, meanwhile, was practically bouncing off the walls. Elvis Presley, the king. Our library is being saved by Elvis Presley. This is the most amazing thing ever. Mayor Thompson, though still a bit dazed, was already shifting into practical mode. We need to announce this immediately. Call a special town meeting. This will be the biggest news Maple Creek has ever had. But Eleanor couldn't quite focus on the logistics yet. Her mind kept replaying the words, a personal connection, find peace and escape. She tried to imagine Elvis Presley, the king, walking through the quiet aisles of her library, perhaps incognito, searching for a moment of calm. It was a bizarre, almost magical thought. As M.S. Davies and Mayor Thompson discussed the next steps, Eleanor picked up the original letter again, running her finger over the elegant calligraphy to the spirit of Maple Creek, and underneath, the name A.E. Presley, a name that now held anew in Cresley. The king had reached out from beyond the grave, not with a song, but with a lifeline for a small, struggling library. It was the most improbable, heartwarming, and truly dazzling miracle. The Maple Creek Library, it seemed, had just received the royal treatment. The news hit Maple Creek like a lightning bolt. Mayor Thompson called an emergency town meeting, the urgency in his voice sparking widespread curiosity. Community Hall was even more packed than it had been for the closure announcement. People buzzed with theories, rumors, and a faint, desperate hope. When Mayor Thompson, looking both triumphant and still slightly shell-shocked, announced that the Maple Creek Library had received a multi-million-dollar donation from the estate of Elvis Presley. First a stunned silence, then a confused murmur, quickly followed by disbelieving laughter, and finally an explosion of cheers and applause. It took several minutes for the mayor to restore order. I know it's hard to believe, Mayor Thompson shouted over the din, but it's true. M.S. Davies, our town lawyer, has verified everything. The funds are already being processed for transfer. Eleanor stood beside him, a small, bewildered smile on her face. She saw Leo in the crowd, practically vibrating with excitement, high-fiving his friends. The relief was immense, palpable. The library was saved. But even amidst the euphoria, the question lingered. Why Elvis? Why Maple Creek? The town had no famous connections, no grand history that would link it to the legendary king of rock and roll. People whispered, speculated. Had he visited? Was it a joke? The answer, it turned out, lay in a forgotten corner of history, a quiet footnote in a life that was anything but quiet. Eleanor, along with Mayor Thompson and M.S. Davies, had a follow-up call with the law firm managing the Presley estate. They had more details passed down through the estate's long-standing staff. Mr. Presley, the estate lawyer, a kindly older man named Mr. Albright, explained over the phone. Loved to drive, and sometimes he'd just go. He'd slip away from Memphis, usually in a disguise, and to be a regular person for a while. Eleanor leaned forward, listening intently. Back in the late 1960s, around 68, 69 Kroosteri per 69, Creafer ain't for Tristan. Pymus. Why? His car, a Cadillac, had some engine trouble. He was stuck, and his handlers couldn't immediately locate him. He was wearing a hat, sunglasses, and apparently had grown a beard for a while, so he wasn't easily recognizable. He needed a place to wait, Mr. Albright continued. He wasn't comfortable in the diner, too. Many eyes. Someone. A kind, older woman, suggested he. Go to the library, said it was the quietest place in town, and had plenty of stories to keep a man company. Eleanor imagined it. A disguised Elvis, stepping into her library. A wave of awe washed over her. He spent an entire afternoon there, Mr. Albright recounted. Just reading. He apparently loved history books, especially about the Civil War and biographies. He said it was the most peaceful he'd felt in years. No one bothered him. No one asked for an autograph. He was just a manly fixed he left, but he never forgot that quiet afternoon. The lawyer paused. He made a note scribbled on a napkin that if he ever had the means, he wanted to give back to the quiet places that nourish the soul. That specific codicil was drawn up years later, but it took this long for various legal and estate processes to align and identified, which it clearly was, with Maple Creek. Eleanor felt tears welling in her eyes. It wasn't just a random act of generosity. It was a deeply personal one, rooted in a moment of quiet solace, found within the very walls she was fighting to save. Elvis Presley, the dazzling king, had found refuge in her small, unassuming library. He found peace here, she whispered, a profound sense of connection settling over her. Mayor Thompson, equally moved, cleared his throat. Well, I'll be. Imagine that the king right here in Maple Creek. The story, once shared with the town, became an instant legend. People started remembering or claiming to remember a strange man with a beard and sunglasses around that time. Old Mr. Henderson, the library's oldest patron, suddenly exclaimed. There was a fellow always wore a wide-brimmed hat, spent hours in the history section. I just figured he was a quiet tourist. Leo was fascinated. He was just reading. Like us. No bodyguards, no screaming fans. Just like us, Leo, Eleanor confirmed, a genuine smile finally gracing her lips. He was just a man looking for a story. The revelation transformed the initial shock and disbelief into a deeper appreciation. The donation wasn't just money. It was a personal gift. A testament to the enduring power of quiet moments and unexpected kindness. The Maple Creek Library wasn't just being saved. It was being honored, recognized for the solace it had provided to a soul in need, even if that soul belonged to a superstar. Eleanor walked through the library later that day, looking at the history section where Elvis might have sat. She pictured him, not as the flashing lights and sequined jumpsuit icon, but as a weary man finding quiet refuge among the books. The library felt different now, imbued with a new, almost mythical aura. It was no longer just the town library. It was the library touched by the king, a place where legends found solace and quiet dreams were born. The king's legacy, it seemed, wasn't just in his music, but in the enduring, quiet spirit of a small town library. With the incredible news confirmed, and the story of Elvis's quiet visit now a cherished town, legend, a palpable wave of excitement washed over Maple Creek. The despair that had hung heavy in the air for weeks evaporated, replaced by a vibrant energy. The library, once slated for closure, was now set to become a beacon of hope and a symbol of what unexpected generosity could achieve. The multi-million-dollar donation from the Elvis Presley estate arrived promptly, a sale string of digits appearing in the Maple Creek Library's account. Eleanor, Mayor Thompson and the town council formed a special committee, including Leo as a youth representative to oversee the fund's allocation. It was an overwhelming task, but Eleanor tackled it with a renewed sense of purpose. Her weariness was gone, replaced by an infectious zeal. "We need to be thoughtful," Eleanor told the committee at their first meeting. "This isn't just about spending money. It's about honoring Mr. Presley's quiet generosity and ensuring the library serves Maple Creek for generations to come." Their first priority was infrastructure. The ancient boiler was replaced instantly, making the library a warm and inviting space even on the chilliest days. The leaky roof was repaired and the outdated electrical system was completely overhauled, bringing the building safely into the 21st century. New energy-efficient windows were installed, letting in more natural light and making the space feel even more open and welcoming. Next came the interior. Eleanor, with input from the community, envisioned a library that blended its historical charm with modern functionality. The dusty, overflowing shelves were reorganized. Many of the older, worn-out books were lovingly replaced or rebound. New sections were created, a dedicated technology hub with brand-new computers and high-speed internet, a vibrant children's discovery zone with interactive learning stations, and a comfortable modern reading lounge with plush armchairs and soft lighting. "We have to make sure it still feels like our library, though," Eleanor emphasized to the architect. They hired a local woman who understood the town's character. "It can't become cold or corporate. It needs to keep its warmth, its soul." The architect agreed, incorporating original architectural elements into the new designs, restoring the old oak paneling and preserving the beloved fireplace in the main reading room. Even the old oak door with its friendly creak was kept lovingly restored. One of the most exciting additions was a dedicated Maple Creek history and local authors room. Eleanor envisioned a space where the town's unique story could be preserved and celebrated. This room would also feature a subtle, respectful nod to the library's extraordinary benefactor. A small, elegant display case would house a replica of the letter from the Presley estate, along with a tasteful plaque briefly detailing Elvis's quiet visit and his legacy of generosity. No garish Elvis posters, no cardboard cutouts, just a quiet acknowledgement of the king's unexpected connection to their town. Leo was particularly instrumental in designing the new teen zone. He advocated for comfortable beanbag chairs, a dedicated space for board games, and even a small recording booth for aspiring podcasters and musicians. "It needs to be a place where kids want to hang out, not just where they have to for homework," he explained with passion. Eleanor, recognizing his insight, fully supported his ideas. The transformation was gradual but remarkable. Day by day, the library shed its tired skin and began to glow with a new vitality. The community watched, fascinated and proud. Volunteers inspired by the spirit of generosity flocked to help painting, moving furniture, and even helping to catalog the new acquisitions. The library became a hive of activity, a symbol of rejuvenation for the entire town. During the renovations, Eleanor would often pause, looking around at the bustling construction. She thought of Elvis perhaps sitting quietly in a corner lost in a book. She wondered if he would approve of the changes, if he would still find the same peace in this revitalized space. She believed he would. The essence of the library, its quiet warmth, its invitation to explore and learn, remained untouched, only enhanced. The local newspaper, the Maple Creek Gazette, ran weekly updates on the renovation progress. National news outlets even picked up the story. Elvis saves small-town library, turning Maple Creek into a momentary sensation. Tourists, curious about the library with a royal connection, began to trickle into town, boosting local businesses. Eleanor, despite the whirlwind of activity, felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The library wasn't just being saved, it was being reborn. It was shedding its skin of scarcity and emerging as a vibrant, thriving hub, a true testament to the power of stories, community, and the surprising, enduring legacy of a king who once found solace in a quiet corner of Maple Creek. The future, which had once seemed so dark, now shone brightly, filled with endless possibilities. As the renovation of the Maple Creek Library progressed, an undeniable buzz filled the town. The sight of construction workers, delivery trucks, and new fixtures arriving daily was a constant reminder of the incredible gift that had been bestowed upon them. Yet with great change often comes minor friction, and the library's transformation was no exception. Not everyone was immediately thrilled with all the proposed changes. Mrs. Periwinkle, a long-time resident known for her love of tradition and her slightly sharp opinions, voiced her concerns at a community meeting. Teen zone with beanbag chairs and computers. What's wrong with good old-fashioned books and quiet study? This isn't a youth club, it's a library. Eleanor listened patiently, acknowledging the concerns. Mrs. Periwinkle, we understand the desire to preserve the library's traditional feel. And believe me, the quiet study areas will still be there, stronger than ever. But a library needs to evolve to serve everyone in the community. Espinier, think of it this way, Mrs. Periwinkle. If kids come for the computers or the games, they're still in the library. They're still surrounded by books, and maybe, just maybe, they'll pick one up. It's about bringing more people and showing them how much library. His words seemed to resonate, especially with some of the parents in the room. Another point of contention arose when it came to a particular set of old, somewhat battered encyclopedias. They were outdated, rarely used, but had been in the library for decades, a comforting fixture for many older patrons. The renovation plans called for them to be replaced with digital encyclopedias and more current reference materials. Those encyclopedias have been here since I was a girl, exclaimed Mr. Peterson, a gruff but kind farmer. My grandchildren used them for their school projects. Eleanor, recalling Elvis's love for history books, found a compromise. We'll digitally archive their contents, ensuring the information is preserved, and perhaps we can feature a display of these particular encyclopedias, honoring their long service to Maple Creek. We can also create an online version. These small debates, though occasionally heated, were handled with patience and open discussion. It was a testament to Eleanor's steady leadership and the town's underlying affection for the library. The challenges weren't about malice, but about differing visions and the natural resistance to change. One major hurdle arose when a historic preservation society, having heard about the renovation, expressed concerns about potential alterations to the building's original 1930s facade. They were worried that the library might lose its historical integrity in the modernization process. This led to a temporary halt in some exterior work, causing a brief panic among the committee. Mayor Thompson and Eleanor had to present detailed architectural plans, demonstrating how the exterior would be respectfully preserved and restored, not altered. They highlighted how new windows would match the original style, and how the brickwork would be meticulously cleaned and repaired rather than replaced. The society, after a thorough review, eventually gave their enthusiastic approval, even offering advice on historical restoration techniques. Through it all, the community's spirit remained remarkably strong. Volunteers continued to pour in, offering their time and skills. Local carpenters crafted beautiful new wooden display shelves. Artists painted murals in the children's section depicting scenes from classic fairy tales. Gardeners revitalized the library's neglected grounds, planting colorful flowers and sturdy shade trees. Leo, true to his word, rallied his friends, and they helped organize thousands of books, carefully dusting and arranging them on the new shelves. He even convinced a local tech whiz to donate some of his time setting up the new computer systems. Eleanor found herself working longer hours than ever, but she felt energized, not exhausted. She was constantly consulting with architects, contractors, and community members, making sure every decision honored both the past and the future of the library. She saw the library transforming from a place of quiet despair to a vibrant hub of activity, a symbol of the town's resilience and its ability to embrace change while holding on to its heart. One evening, as she surveyed the bustling renovation site, a sense of profound gratitude washed over her. The unexpected gift from Elvis had not only saved the library, but had also brought the community closer, inspiring a collective effort to build something truly special. The minor challenges were just part of the journey, proving that even the most heartwarming of transformations could have their growing pains. But the spirit of Maple Creek and its beloved library was stronger than ever. The old oak door, soon to be polished to a shine, was about to welcome an entirely new chapter. The day finally arrived. After months of tireless work, a whirlwind of construction, painting, wiring, and meticulous shelving, the Maple Creek Library was ready for its grand reopening. The date was set for a crisp Saturday in early spring, a perfect symbol of renewal. The entire town seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. The local newspaper had run a special edition, detailing the transformation and featuring interviews with Eleanor, Mayor Thompson, and even Leo, who spoke passionately about the new teen zone. The story of Elvis's unlikely connection had now firmly embedded itself in the town's folklore, adding an almost mythical charm to the grand event. Eleanor, dressed in her best deep blue suit, stood at the library's newly polished oak door. A mixture of nerves and overwhelming pride bubbling within her, the morning sun glinted off the new crystal-clear windows. The scent of fresh paint mingled with the familiar, comforting aroma of old books, creating a unique perfume of past and future. The crowd had already gathered on the wide front steps and spilled onto the lawn, a sea of eager faces. Children clutched balloons, seniors leaned on canes, and families held hands, all united by a shared sense of excitement. Mayor Thompson stood beside Eleanor, beaming. Ms. Davies, who had navigated the complex legalities, and Mr. Henderson, the oldest patron, were also among the honored guests. Mayor Thompson stepped forward, holding a microphone. Friends, neighbors, fellow citizens of Maple Creek. His voice boomed, full of pride. Today is a day we will remember forever. A day when a dream almost lost became a vibrant reality. He spoke about the town's struggle, the impending closure, and then, with a dramatic flourish, recounted the incredible story of the Elvis Presley donation. He praised Eleanor Vance's unwavering dedication and the tireless work of the community volunteers. Then he turned to Eleanor. And now it is my great honor to present to you the new, improved, and truly magnificent Maple Creek Library, brought back to life by the spirit of generosity and the heart of our community. Eleanor, the floor is yours. Eleanor took the microphone, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice clear and strong. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, everyone. This library has always been more than just a building. It's a place where stories live, where minds expand, and for it, Mr. Presley, wherever he may be, once found solace in these quiet halls. He found peace among the books, and in his unique way, he ensured that future generation would also find that peace, that knowledge, that connection here. This library is a testament to the power of kindness, the magic of books, and the enduring strength of a community that refuses to give up. With a flourish, she cut the ceremonial ribbon that stretched across the doorway. A burst of applause and cheers erupted, louder than any she had heard before. The crowd surged forward, eager to explore. Eleanor stepped aside, letting the first wave of patrons flow in. Their reactions were priceless. Gasps of delight, exclamations of surprise, and happy murmurs filled the air. The transformation was indeed stunning. The main reading room, with its restored fireplace, now featured comfortable new armchairs and tables bathed in soft, inviting light from the large, clean windows. The old, somewhat cramped children's section had blossomed into a spacious, colorful discovery zone, complete with low, colorful shelves, interactive learning games, and a cozy storytime corner. Shaped like a giant open book, Leo led a group of his friends directly to the teen hub, their eyes wide with approval. The beanbag chairs were already being claimed, the gaming consoles buzzing quietly, and the soundproofed podcast booth beckoned. In the newly designated Maple Creek History and Local Authors Room, a small, elegant display case had been set up. Inside, under soft lighting, was a beautifully framed copy of the letter from the Presley estate, along with a tasteful plaque that read, "A gift from the King in enduring gratitude for the quiet solace found within these walls, by Elvis Presley." 19-year. Eleanor watched as families explored, children giggled, and older patrons rediscovered their favorite sections, now brighter and more accessible. She saw Mr. Henderson settling into a new armchair, a thick history book already open in his lap, a contented smile on his face. The library was alive, truly alive, buzzing with a vibrant, joyful energy. It was everything she had dreamed of, and more. It was a testament not just to Elvis's generosity, but to the collective spirit of Maple Creek. This wasn't just a building, it was the town's heart, beating stronger than ever, ready to welcome countless new stories and countless new dreams. The grand reopening wasn't just an event, it was a celebration of hope, community, and the surprising, beautiful ways in which miracles can unfold. The grand reopening of the Maple Creek Library wasn't just a one-day event. It marked the beginning of a profound transformation for the entire town. The library quickly became the vibrant heart of Maple Creek, a bustling hub that drew people in from every walk of life, just as Eleanor had envisioned, the Discovery Zone. For children, was an instant hit. Storytime sessions, once attended by a handful of toddlers, were now packed with parents, lining the walls as Eleanor, or a rotating cast of enthusiastic volunteers, brought stories to life. The interactive learning stations were rarely empty, sparking curiosity and joy in young minds. Kids who had never stepped foot in the old library now eagerly dragged their parents inside, eyes wide with wonder. Teen Hub, designed by Leo, became the most popular after-school hangout spot. It was a space where teens could do homework, research projects on the new computers, play board games, or just relax in the beanbag chairs. The podcast booth was constantly booked with aspiring young voices recording everything from book reviews to local news commentaries. Leo himself started a regular book chat podcast, interviewing his friends about their favorite reads, reaching a wider audience than the library ever had before. "Ms. Vance, you were right," Leo told her one afternoon, a triumphant grin on his face. "If you build it, they will come, and they'll even read books." Pointed to a group of teens engrossed in a graphic novel discussion. The adult section saw a resurgence too. Comfortable new reading lounge attracted more patrons who simply wanted a quiet, inviting space to read or work. New book clubs formed their discussions, spilling out from the meeting rooms into the main library space. The enhanced Wi-Fi and ample power outlets meant that remote workers and students from nearby towns also started using the library as a peaceful, productive workspace. The Maple Creek History and Local Authors Room became a point of quiet pride. Local historians spent hours poring over digitized archives. Local authors held readings and workshops, fostering a thriving literary scene within the community. And the discreet Elvis display case served as a quiet, respectful reminder of the miracle that had saved their beloved institution. Tourists, drawn by the unique story, would often stop by, sometimes leaving small, respectful tributes or notes of gratitude. The library also launched new community programs. Eleanor, with the expanded budget, hired a part-time program coordinator, allowing her to focus more on collection development and community outreach. There were free computer, literacy classes for seniors, resume building workshops for job seekers, and even a seed library where residents could borrow and exchange seeds for their gardens. The library became a true community center, a place for learning, connecting, and growing. Mayor Thompson often spoke of the Elvis effect on Maple Creek. The renewed energy and pride in the library seemed to ripple out into other areas of town life. Local businesses, buoyed by the increased visitor traffic and a general sense of optimism, reported higher sales. Town council even started looking into other community improvement projects inspired by the library's transformation. Eleanor, though busier than ever, found immense joy in her work. She loved seeing the library teeming with life, hearing the quiet chatter, the turning of pages, the laughter of children. She saw shy kids blossom as they discovered new worlds, and lonely seniors find companionship in a shared love for books. She saw how a single unexpected act of kindness could ripple outwards, changing countless lives. She often thought about Elvis the King and his quiet visit. His legacy, she realized, wasn't just in his music or his fame. It was in the enduring power of a thoughtful gesture, in the preservation of a place that offered solace and inspiration. He had provided the means, but the people of Maple Creek, through their love and dedication, had truly brought the library back to life. One sunny afternoon, Eleanor watched through her office window as a young mother and her child emerged from the library, the child clutching a vibrant picture book. The mother smiled, a genuine, unhurried smile, and paused on the steps, taking in the beauty of the library. It was a scene that had almost been lost forever, but now, thanks to a quiet moment in the past and an incredible act of generosity, it was a daily reality. The Maple Creek Library was thriving, its story continuing, chapter after joyful chapter. Years passed, and the Maple Creek Library continued to flourish, a testament to the enduring power of community, knowledge, and an unexpected act of kindness from beyond the grave. The once struggling institution was now a vibrant, indispensable part of Maple Creek, its future secured for generations to come. Eleanor Vance, though a few more silver strands now graced her bun, remained the heart of the library. She had seen countless children grow up within its walls, from their first picture books to their high school research papers. Leo Martinez, who had once despaired over the library's closure, had gone off to college, pursuing a degree in library science. He often returned to Maple Creek during breaks, always spending time at the library, helping Eleanor, and even guest hosting his old book chat podcast from the teen booth. He talked about bringing new ideas back to Maple Creek once he graduated, about continuing the legacy. The Elvis effect was still a subtle, beloved part of the town's identity. The discreet display in the history room continued to draw quiet contemplation. It wasn't a tourist trap, but a genuine point of interest, a story that reminded everyone of the unique journey their library had taken. Sometimes, visitors would leave small tokens, a worn CD of Elvis's gospel music, a pressed flower, a simple note expressing gratitude for the quiet place. These gestures, small as they were, spoke volumes about the enduring impact of the King's quiet act of generosity. The library had become a model for other small towns struggling to maintain their cultural institutions. Eleanor often received calls from librarians across the state, even the country, asking for advice inspired by Maple Creek's miraculous recovery. She always emphasized the same points: the power of community advocacy, the importance of adapting to modern needs, and the almost unbelievable truth that sometimes a miracle truly does happen. But beyond the operational successes and the national attention, the true legacy of the Elvis donation lay in the profound shift it had brought to Maple Creek itself. The library was no longer just a building filled with books. It was a symbol. It stood for hope in the face of adversity, for the unexpected generosity of strangers, and for the unwavering spirit of a small town that refused to let its heart be silenced. It reminded everyone that knowledge was a treasure, the community connections were vital, and that even the most famous of individuals could find solace and leave a lasting, quiet mark in the most unassuming of places. It taught them that a single act of kindness, whether from a local neighbor or a global legend, could ripple out and transform lives in unimaginable ways. On a quiet afternoon, Eleanor sat in the newly renovated reading lounge, watching the gentle sunlight stream through the windows. A young mother read aloud to her child in the children's section, their voices a soft murmur. An elderly man, Mr. Henderson's successor in his favorite armchair, snored softly over a newspaper. A group of teens debated a science fiction novel with passionate whispers in the teen hub. The air hummed with the quiet, joyful symphony of a thriving library. Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sounds wash over her. She thought of that desperate Tuesday morning years ago, when the news of closure had landed like a death knell. She thought of the heavy despair, the feeling of utter helplessness. And then she thought of the cream-colored envelope, the elegant calligraphy, and the utterly impossible name, A.E. Presley. It wasn't just a donation of money, it was a donation of hope. A belief in the power of quiet places, of stories, of learning. Elvis Presley, the dazzling king, had chosen to leave a legacy, not just of rock and roll, but of literacy, community, and the enduring magic found within the pages of a book. Eleanor opened her eyes, a contented smile gracing her lips. The Maple Creek Library wasn't just open, it was thriving, a living, breathing testament to a truly heartwarming story. It was more than ever the undisputed heart of Maple Creek, beating strong and true, filled with the echoes of a king's quiet visit and the vibrant life of a community. And in its quiet hum, you could almost hear a faint, distant melody, a timeless song of gratitude and enduring love.